everyone, and welcome back to the Personal Branding Festival. I am Tanvi Bhatt, your host for this fantastic summit. This virtual summit, in fact, where we are hosting over 20 world class thought leaders on topics of personal branding, public speaking, thought leadership, social media, and so on and so forth. And today we are speaking with one of the world's most renowned branding thought leaders. Please welcome Jerome Joseph to the room.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Tanvi. Glad to be on the show. I'm very excited to get started.
Thank you so much, Jerome, to begin with, to join us today. It's an absolute pleasure to host you at the festival. I know you've been like ranked consistently on the world's top leading brand gurus. I think this year you were number two, if I'm not wrong.
I am number two.
Yeah.
And there's a story behind it. So
Hmm.
when you ask, I will tell you that story. But yes, I am number two.
Fantastic. So tell me, I really want to ask this question to somebody who's so accomplished. Being number two on world's the list of global gurus on branding, an author of over eight best-selling books on branding, a keynote speaker of over 20 years of experience who's inspired probably thousands or millions of speakers, leaders, thought leaders to build their personal brand. What do you believe is your single most profound accomplishment when it comes to the journey of building this massive impact on people's life as a brand coach?
So I'm going to link it back to a story, and I'm going to share this story with all your viewers tuning in, right? It links back to where I am today.
Right.
When I started my journey, probably about 20 plus years ago, I remember going into my first ever job interview. And I was super excited. And it was a brand consulting company.
Right.
I walk in, and it was during that session that I had this interview when the interviewer asked me, where do you see yourself? And I said, I want to be one of the best in the world when it comes to branding.
Right.
I want to be number one. He looked at me and he burst out laughing. And this is what he said to me: Jerome, I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Hmm.
I don't think it's ever going to happen. Plus, you're Asian.
Oh my.
I know. Now, this is me, young me, who had this great ambition of really being a thought leader and really growing in my career, that was crushed in that minute.
Correct.
I remember walking out the interview being completely crushed. I had this, my dreams, my vision, and everything that I wanted to be. And I knew very on that I wanted to be the best when it comes to branding. And this guy just crushed it. Obviously, the guy wasn't Asian.
Nice.
But I started having self-doubt. Like, I don't think I'm going to do it. I don't think I can. I don't think I'm good enough. I wept and I kind of put myself down for a few days. And then I pause and I go, hey, listen, it's one man's opinion. And as such, I told myself, you know what? I need to believe in myself, and I know that I can do it. And so I put in the hours and the time and the effort to grow in my career and to be where I am today. And to be honest, I'm not number one yet. I'm number two in the world, and I still have a journey ahead. But to answer your question, my biggest revelation, my biggest revelation is this: you have to believe in yourself. You cannot let the naysayers put you down.
Right.
You cannot let them put you down. Believe in yourself that you can do it. The rest of it is noise. Ignore it and focus on where you want to go. And that's my biggest lesson in my life.
Wow, brilliant. I think that's something that most of us, regardless of how we evolve, grow, accomplish, we still have those. Women have a lot more of it, the so-called imposter syndrome. I don't know how many men probably have ever faced it. In your opinion, as a coach to all these leaders, have you seen men also struggle with self-doubts or bouts of having an imposter syndrome? Looking like,
Tanvi, all the time. This
yeah.
is not, I don't think this is a gender thing. I
Mm.
think both male and female have 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 issues. We all do, in fact. I know many people that I coach and I train that have these issues. So it's not, I don't think it's a gender thing, in my opinion, right? Because in my experience and what I face, I see both male and females going through this imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. I've got self-doubt. I'm not sure. Maybe men act a little bit more confident. It could be
Hmm.
men act a little bit more confident, but I think it's both genders have the same problem. So yes, it's there. Look, I have it. I'm openly saying and do I still have self-doubt? Yes, I do all the time. But what transforms you or what triggers you is belief. Because every time there is doubt, there is a belief that needs to come and fight that doubt and say, look, I can do this. You got this. If you ever follow me on social media, there's a line that I use. Like I always say, I got this, I got this. So it's kind of like my own personal anthem to myself. I got this, I got this, I got this.
Correct. Wow, brilliant. So yes, coming back to your story, tell me, how did your introduction to the world's leading global gurus list happen?
So so basically, I mean, I wrote 8 books,
Mhm.
and I realized that a lot of my books were being used in organizations, and a lot of books were being adopted. In fact, one of my books on internal branding, which is this one,
Mm.
is being used in 2 or 3 universities. So I realized that with all this thought leadership and all the work that I was doing, and at that point of time, I was speaking in 30 plus countries all around the world.
Right.
I realized that, you know what, I'm getting there. And global gurus at that point of time looked at identifying brand gurus around the world. And as such, I received my invitation to be part of the list. Now, when I first got on the list, I mean, I was like in the top 30. I was not even close to there. But again, as I said to you, right, it's my belief. It's going back to all those years when that guy
Mhm.
told me, you're never going to be good enough. You're never going to
Right.
succeed in your Asian. And I've always been this belief that I have that I'm going to do it. So in 2020, I finally got to number 2. This year, I got to number 2.
Wow.
I put a video of it in YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, you'll see me put this video and tell that story. And I finally got there. And in this video, and what I share to people is I got to number 2 in the world, but I am still not satisfied because there is a saying, comfort never produces greatness. And I want to be uncomfortable because my goal is really to be the best in the world. That's my goal, period. And I'm
Mm.
going to do everything I can to get to that goal. So it's brands, and for the viewers, all of you, as a personal brand, you will have a vision that you want to go towards.
Right.
And you need to be obsessed towards getting to that vision, putting in the hours and the effort. Look, I've got an entire strategic plan that I put into place on a yearly basis to help me get closer to my vision.
Hmm.
I've been doing this now for 23 years, and I just got to number 2. So it's taken me a long time to get there,
True.
and I'm still not there yet. And so this obsession with getting better and getting better, and even when you achieve your vision, stop, aim a little bit more higher, and start going towards that vision. And that's what I tell the brands that I work with. Every action, every strategic
Mm.
direction that you take is needed for you to get closer to your own vision.
Wow. So, I know it's been baby steps and some huge leaps over the last 20 years in the field of branding and becoming beyond competent in helping some of the world's best brands rebrand themselves, create amazing customer experiences, which I know is a pet topic for you. But talking about personal branding, personal branding as a whole industry has kind of come into existence and evolved over the last 10 to 15 years. How have you seen the evolution of this concept, this philosophy, or a strategy for managing your career, essentially, with what it is, over the last 20 years, especially in the pre social media age and the post social media age?
So it's interesting, right? I wrote my book and on personal branding in 2007. How
Hmm.
many years ago is that?
Oh, yeah.
2007, what's that? 13 years ago?
Yes, absolutely.
So 13 years ago, I wrote my book on personal branding. And prior to that, I was already talking about personal branding to organizations and individuals.
Okay.
So I mean, I've preached it. A lot of people didn't believe me that when I said that personal branding was going to be a big thing.
Right.
A lot of doubters. Trust me when I said a lot of people go, personal branding. You mean I can be a brand? No, brand is only a product.
Correct.
And I go, no, you can be a brand. So my first book that came out in 2007 challenged that notion that people could become brands.
Wow.
And I had resistance, of course. I mean, there are people who laughed at me. Of course, as a thought leader, this is what's going to happen. When you put out a thought in the marketplace, two things will happen. You got people that clamor and go, wow, I love this. But there were people that fold their arms and go, sir, I don't believe in this.
True.
And that's okay, because that's what thought leadership is all about, right? You're putting out an idea. It's going to be uncomfortable for some people, but it's your idea.
Yeah.
Now, what has evolved is when I first wrote my book, I looked at personal branding from a very in-person perspective, right? So I looked at it from networking and what you're going to say to people that you meet and what you put out there when you are in person. It was very, what's the word, very offline driven and very little on the online component. So what has changed? I'm going to tell you two crucial things that have changed. Number one is that the digital aspect, the online aspect of personal branding has grown significantly.
True.
Number one, what's the biggest change from when I wrote the book in 2007. There was no Facebook then, there was nothing. I mean, there was really very minimal social media. There was some, I think it was Friendster, I believe, at that point of time. But in 2007, until now, that's been the big shift, number one.
Right.
Number two, and it's very important, and this is important for everyone listening in. Number two is that people have become a lot more educated of what's happening around the world because of the exposure. Again, it goes back to point number one about the online world is I can see, I can look, I can Google, there's search engine, there's ads. So there's been an increased visibility for everybody. So if you're a personal brand today, you now can be searched. Now people can Google you, people can find you. So that's the big evolution. Because when I wrote the book, a lot of it was pushing out your information out there. And it was like pushing it out so that people come into you. But now without even pushing it out, people are looking for you. People can find you.
Correct.
So which translates to the significance of that is what you say or do today, you need to be very careful because it now becomes a reflection of your brand in the marketplace.
Absolutely. In fact, I think, when I look at the evolution, I'll go a couple of decades behind where, it all started with the concept of your grooming, your etiquette, your presentation, your image, or whatever you call it, your protocols, how you interact. Those were the baby steps in the world of managing your personal brand. But slowly after, especially, thanks to Tom Peters, the concept of brand was introduced, and we started possibly exploring ourselves as brands or icons. Only celebrities didn't have the potential to be known as authorities of their art and craft or their celebrityhood that they had. Leaders were able to do that. Leaders were able to conduct their careers and themselves as icons. And today, especially, it's been the shift has been for good. Although there are certain reservations I have in a couple of aspects, but moreover, the shift which I have seen globally is towards thought leadership. People have started to understand and accept that your personal brand is your thought leadership. I've said this for the last 10 years that I've been in this practice. It's not how you look, it's not how you dress, it's not how you speak to people. Those are important elements of your brand, if you may, but it's essentially your thought leadership. So tell me, apart from, I know you agree on this 100%, apart from believing and evangelizing the concept that your personal brand is your thought leadership, what does Jerome Joseph believe are three absolutely non negotiable elements or laws that people should be following when it comes to building their personal brand?
And I like them. So maybe before I answer the question, let's go talk a little bit about thought leadership.
Yeah.
So I like the concept of thought leadership because if you are an entrepreneur, being known in your space is very crucial. So thought leadership for me is how I would define it is it doesn't mean you have an original idea, but rather that you are known in your space or you are a leader in your space in, for example, if you are known for selling handbags, for example, So it's not, it's the leadership comes from the fact that you are the expert in handbags.
Sure.
So that I agree. So I think that's a good concept to look at personal branding by being an expert in your space.
All right.
But let's go back to your 3 points. What are three crucial things? Well, laws. There's a whole bunch of stuff I can talk about. So I'm trying to think how am I going to condense it in 3 points. But
Oh,
let's talk about one of them, right? So one of them is the need to be strategic. So a lot of people, when you start thinking about personal branding, they think that, oh, it's about how many posts I can put on social media. Yeah, I built my personal brand. No, it's not.
yeah.
Personal brand is really a very strategic process. And when I coach and I work with clients, I always tell them that you need to develop a clear plan, a clear roadmap of what you want to do with your, just as how a big brand would do it.
True.
So number one is you got to be strategic.
Hmm.
Everything that you post, everything that you do needs to go back towards you asking the question, is this going to help me get closer to my vision? So that's the first thing I think is important. The second thing is focus. I often see people try to do multiple things.
Sure.
And I think that's challenging because that could lead to confusion in the marketplace. I'll give you an example. Many years back, I met this guy and he came up to me and he gave me his name card because here you are. I look at the name card and I was looking at it, and on the name card, it said that he was a real estate real estate agent, not angel.
Okay.
He was a financial planner. When I
Hmm.
turned to the back of the card, he was also doing shipping and a whole bunch of other things. So he had a list of
Right.
maybe about 7 or 8 things that this person was doing. And he gave me his card. And I was confused. Later on, I ended up working with this person.
Hmm.
And we hired me to be his coach because he said, "What do you think about my brand?" And I said, "It's confusing and you have no focus."
Correct.
And in the end, he ended up having clear focus. And the clear focus was he realized that his passion and where he was really good at was financial planning.
Okay.
So he transformed himself and he became the expert, or as you said, the thought leadership is the expert in the area of financial planning. And he became known as the financial guru in his space.
Hmm.
So focus is, I believe, one of the most crucial things that you can have. So
Okay.
that's number 2. Number 3, and I know it's probably what a lot of brands talk about, but I'm going to repeat it. It's about being consistent.
Correct.
What I mean by being consistent is, sometimes a person, when you meet them in person, or when you meet them or you see them online, it's like you're dealing with two different persons.
I know
So
what you.
your brand needs to be projected in a consistent manner across all your touch points, all your channels.
Sure.
People know what they're going to get. It's like this. I mean, you said this to me. You said, "Jerome, I saw you and you're so energetic and you're full of energy." I'm pretty sure that in this session, you see the same energy that comes across.
Oh,
You see the same passion that comes across. So even when I post, when I put videos, when I'm speaking in a conference, or when I'm coaching someone, the same energy comes across in a consistent manner.
hmm.
Share the same things in a consistent manner. So that's key, right? The way you project your brand has to be consistent across all your key channels. I hope these 3 things, a lot more things actually, but I hope these 3 things will help your viewers start thinking about their personal
Yeah,
brand.
absolutely. But I do have a follow-up question on that. And I've seen this a lot. I'm sure it's equally relevant across the world. The story of the gentleman you said. There's so many entrepreneurs who have been family, entrepreneurs. They have family businesses and stuff like that for decades. And they're doing multiple things today. But today, with the advent of the LinkedIn branding era, they want to be more visible. They want to be known as go-to experts, thought leaders in their industry.
Mhm.
And they come to me talking about their branding, etc. But they're doing so many things. Okay. So while of course that's a different approach altogether, and how do you help them to arrive at their focus? What would you advise to people out there who are probably still not even sure if personal branding is right for them because they're like, I'm doing so many things, right? How do I ever narrow it down to that one thing that I want the world to know me for? What is your advice to those people and how they should get out of their own head?
So firstly, I want to set one thing straight. If you're a human being and you are in the corporate world, you are a personal brand. Full stop. In
Right.
fact, in my workshops and my keynotes, I always say this: the day you were born is the day you are the CEO of brand you.
Right.
So you are a personal brand. Now, you can choose to ignore your personal brand,
Mhm.
or you can choose to invest in it. And it's your choice. But if I was you, 100% I would look at investing in you building your personal brand,
Correct.
especially if you are in the corporate world, you're in the market, if you're selling something, you're trying to position yourself, you need this to happen. Number one. Number two is, what do you need to do when you have all these things that you want to do? Of course,
Correct.
people evolve, and people evolve because they look at needs and what's happening in the world, and they evolve. For example, COVID, COVID caused many personal brands to evolve.
True.
So my answer to that is this: how do you decide?
Hmm.
Number one is to look at the marketplace and see if there is a need for what you do,
Sure.
because that's going to help you then say, okay, I need to position myself in that need. Now, with me, I've always wanted to be a brand guy.
Hmm.
So it came very naturally. But of course, I mean, when I started doing branding in 1994, I'm telling you, right? I used to go into organizations and people laugh at me. Branding? We don't need branding.
Right.
Or someone will come to me, goes, branding? Yeah, give me a nice logo. And it was very challenging in the 1990s to convince people that branding was absolutely crucial for an organization. So I suffered. My early days of doing business, I suffered because the need wasn't established. So for you today in the marketplace is, see if you can find a need, or if you can find a gap in the or opportunity in the marketplace that your services can fit. So that's number one. Number two is then think about what you love and what you are passionate about. Because if you hate what you do, and even though there's a need, you hate what you do, you are not going to be successful. So I'm telling you, I'm obsessed with branding. I love what I do. You need to have that same obsession and that same love. So that's number two.
Sure.
Number three, you got to see if it's making money for you.
Correct.
If you see a need and you love what you do, but you can't make money from it, then you may want to relook your personal brand, because maybe you can't make a
Absolutely.
living from it. So
True.
these are the three things that you need to consider when it comes to personal building or narrowing down your focus.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Talking about the companies that you spoke about that you've done a lot of corporate brand strategy for, storytelling is an integral part that we know how companies communicate or express their brand. What are the elements of storytelling that leaders can use or experiment with in telling the story of their personal brand?
So it's interesting, right? So I was just telling you earlier that I did my first in-person workshop
Correct.
in Singapore. So we've been in lockdown. All my programs have been virtual, but this week I did my first in-person workshop. And one of the part of things that we did to do was to get the leaders to tell stories.
Okay.
It was part of the workshop. So let me give you some tips that I did in the workshop and could apply to you.
Right.
So if you are a leader, again, there's two types of leaders, right? There's a leader that is part of a big organization, and there could be a leader that owns their own business. So I'm going to focus this answer for a leader inside an organization.
Sure.
So if you're a leader in an organization, then two things need to happen. Number one is you need to start thinking about stories that reflect the organizational brand,
Hmm.
because you work for the organization, and your own personal brand needs to fit into that organizational brand, so that you need to think of stories that you can share.
Right.
Number two, you then need to think of personal stories that you have that align itself back with that of the organizational brand.
Okay.
So for example, let's say one of the things that your organization is known for is great customer service.
Hmm.
So you need to have stories that talk about this great customer service to the people that you mentor and manage. At the
True.
same time, you need to have personal stories of how you have demonstrated that in your personal brand.
Okay.
The people that are listening to these stories are your team members, and it's your role to inspire them through your leadership of you walking the talk to also go and deliver this great customer service based on the stories that you're telling them. Am I making sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, you could be a leader in your organization,
Mm-hmm.
and you are, this is your company, you are the boss,
So,
you're a leader. Then, in many cases, the leader of the organization's personal values will also reflect in the corporate values. There'll be a high level of synergy because it's
correct.
your organization. The same principle applies. Tell your stories. Don't just tell your stories to the people in your organization, but you also tell the stories to the world. So if you realize, I kind of told a story. I've told two stories actually already to you.
Correct.
The first story I told you was the story about the my first job interview in brand consulting
Correct.
and how someone put me down. Now in the story, you realize that there is a flow to the story. There is the journey, it's kind of like the journey of the hero.
True.
Who's the villain in that story?
Your interviewer, obviously.
The interviewer who told me, you cannot do it. You will fail because you are Asian. And then the hero goes on the journey. He works hard, and then finally he manages to get to a certain level. What's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is very clear when people hear it. I know I got to believe in myself that it's a journey that I need to take. It's going to be tough, but if you believe in myself, you can do it. So that's the premise of any brand story.
Brilliant. Okay. Fantastic. So, uh, while it's very simple to understand the premise of personal brand storytelling, I think it's equally challenging for people to sometimes extract those elements. And those elements, I personally believe, are very important because those kind of cement the relationship. Three elements: authenticity, trust, and influence. What are your few tips that you can share with people today that they can start building these brand assets for themselves, especially in the virtual workspace that we live in, where human to human interaction is virtually zero in real life?
So I didn't get the question. So what's
Okay.
what's the question?
The question is, there are three elements which I think are important for people to have:
Okay,
trust, authenticity, and influence to build that for their personal brand when they're talking and interacting with people.
sure.
How can people manifest more of these things for their personal brand in a virtual work environment?
How can you do it in a virtual environment?
Yeah,
I mean, if you talk about the online world, it's very easy to project that. Of course, because you have all your social channels where you can show it's trust. What's the second one? You said trust, being authentic,
authenticity
and
and
influence.
influence.
Yeah. So that you can do very easily in a social world. So in the online world, through your Facebook, through your LinkedIn, what you post, what you share, all this can happen. So that for me, I'm assuming that's not the question because your question is in the virtual world
Yeah.
when we are working with colleagues. Is that what is that, or is it the social media world?
No, it's while you're working with colleagues, while you're interacting
Okay.
with people, because that real life human touch interaction feel is not there anymore.
Well, you know, when you're working with colleagues, the same thing applies, isn't it? Because if you want to show trust, then you need when you say things, when you do things, you need to make sure that you live up to it or you honor it, right? Because it's a value of trust. If you are looking at what's the second one?
Authenticity.
Oh, okay. So by the way, I love the word authentic. And
Mhm.
I think that's really important.
Right.
So number one, trust. Very simple. Say what you when you say what when you make a commitment or you make a promise, live it, follow it, because that's a big part of trust.
Sure.
Number two, be you. Unless being you is a problem.
All right.
Okay, let me give you an example. So I had a guy that I was coaching, and he's a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a lawyer. He works in a legal firm, and he was what I would call obnoxious.
Wow.
So he feels that because of who he is, he needed to tell people off in their faces, and he thought he was doing them a favor. So
All right.
when I first met him, he when we spoke, I realized that, and we talked about it. And he goes, "I'm being authentic.
Okay.
This is who I am," and that's where I put a question mark on the word being authentic,
Hmm.
meaning that if you are who you are, and you are in an environment where your level of being authentic hurts everyone around you, number one, pick a new environment
Okay.
so that your brand can fit in.
Hmm.
But because he says, I want to be authentic, then in that case, this environment is wrong for you. Your brand doesn't fit you.
Right.
Or number two, rebrand yourself, just like any brand would do. Rebrand yourself to be more relevant.
Hmm.
Maybe it could mean you being less obnoxious. By the way, he didn't use the word obnoxious, he used the word frank.
Correct.
But the feedback that he got from his colleagues were, he's obnoxious. So what he could have done is dial down on being obnoxious, but
Hmm.
focus on other strengths that he has. So that's a big part of rebranding, because it's not just one strength, he's got other things about him. So there were two things. So that's why I'm a little bit careful of the word being authentic.
Correct.
Okay? Number three, influence could come in many ways. So influence could come from you with your colleagues that you have. I'll give you a simple example. One of the things that we did as a business was when COVID happened, we sent goodie bags to all our clients.
Okay.
And it wasn't just current clients, it was like past clients. We sent goodie bags. We said, we sent stuff like saying, hey, we wish you safety, health. Here's a goodie bag. So we did stuff like that. Now, what that shows is that you want to build that relationship. And in
Correct.
many ways, it creates a level where if you want to be top of mind in the client remembers you. Now you could do the same with your colleagues, right? If you go out your way and you are nice to them and you do things for them, in many ways, indirectly, you're influencing them by telling them that this is a great personal brand
True.
because of the actions that this person has done. So influence comes to play here as well. So in a work environment, these are the three things you could do. Now, by the way, going back to trust, going back to the first point of trust, one of the things that I tell leaders in organization is that trust comes by you really making sure that people believe in the things that you are saying.
Hmm.
And if you can't back it up, if you don't keep your promises, you can't back it up, then trust will go, and it's very hard to earn it and earn that back.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, let's talk about your book on personal
Okay.
branding, your philosophy of turn me on. And I love that catchphrase, turn me on. How do you help leaders turn on that spark in them that helps them make the shift from being just a leader to a thought leader in their industry?
Well, in the book, Turn Me On, and now even when we do our personal brand coaching or personal brand workshops or keynotes, I have a 5-step process. Would you like to hear that 5-step process?
Please.
So the 5-step process, we call it the 5D approach.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna summarize it for everyone, for all the viewers in
Sure.
this, right? So take out your pen and paper, and I'm gonna give you some very quick ideas on how you can use the 5D approach.
Okay.
Number one is discover. Write it down, discover. Now, in discover, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go and look at your ecosystem and find out, for example, what people are saying about you or what people feel about the solutions that you're giving. How can you do that? Talking to your colleagues, talking to your customers, looking at competitors. When I talk about competitors, if you are inside an organization, it's looking at other leaders in your organization, or looking at the best practice of leaders in other organizations. And
Hmm.
you take all this information and now you strategically say, okay, I see that this is an opportunity for me to get better here. This is a weakness. I need to drop this and strengthen the strengths down here. So the data from Discover gives you direction on where you want to go. First step.
Mhm.
Everyone got this? Step number two. Step number two is when you define. So it's the second D, write it down, define. So in define, this is what you need to do. In define, you need to say, I've got all this great data. Number one, I need to define what is the need that I'm trying to fill and how does my solution fit in that need. So for example, as a leader in an organization, you realize that the needs is, I need a leader who cares about me. I need a leader who's empathetic about me. How do I fit in providing that solution through my personal brand? So you define that. I call it the problem solution statement. And you also define who is the audiences within your organizations that you need to serve. So for example, you have your team members, it could be your board of directors, it could be your customers. How does your personal brand fit into the needs of all these different types of audiences? So that is number 2. You with me still, Tanvi?
Absolutely.
Number 3. Number 3 is where you now develop your brand strategy. So develop means how do you position yourself vis-a-vis the different audiences?
Right.
How do you create a personality, a brand personality that really connects with people? Vis-a-vis the ecosystem, the strengths, your gaps, your opportunities, your target audiences. And that is the 3rd principle, develop that.
Okay.
The 4th principle is deliver. Deliver is where you start building tools, assets that you need to put out to the world.
Sure.
So this could come from, for example, how you present in meetings. This could come from specific content that you put out there. So for example, if you want to be a thought leader, maybe in your space, you may want to put white papers, you want to go for interviews, a whole bunch of things. You may want to write a book. So all these things at the deliver stage of what happens, the assets that you create to help you deliver your brand based on your audience, your positioning, your personality. And that happens in the deliver segment.
Right.
The final D, you ready for this, Tanvi?
Yeah.
Is drive.
Okay.
And drive is the continuation of what you have just created. Meaning that over the next 1 year, what is my roadmap to reinforce my brand? So for example, one of the leaders that I coach, in his drive plan, he has, as what is put out there, he's going to do, for example, 54 pieces of content that he's going to put across his various channels, inside the organization and outside. Number 2, he's going to do 12 videos that he's going to share inside and outside the organization. Number 3, he is going to go and speak at key events so that his brand is seen in his industry, so that he's recognized as an expert in what he does. And one of the things that I made him do is to write into multiple conferences saying, hey, I want to speak.
Right.
Number 4, one of the things that I got this leader to do was to say, you need to be more visible inside your organization. So what he did was that he started to volunteer. So one of the things that he's volunteering for 2021 is the company's games. So he's organizing the entire company's games. But you know what's good? The big bosses are all flying in for the company's games. And he's organizing it. So his visibilities are going to go boom, because he's rubbing and shaking hands with the big bosses, the global big bosses.
Correct.
And there's a whole bunch of other things that he's doing inside his organization, which you can do as well. Now, if you're not inside an organization, you're an entrepreneur, you have your own business, drive is just as crucial. It means, what am I doing every day to reinforce my brand, drive my credibility in the marketplace? And that's what the final D is all about.
Brilliant. Wow. I absolutely loved your framework. And you so eloquently put it all together in less than 5 minutes. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay. So I've seen time and again that differentiation of your personal brand positioning is perhaps not that much of a challenge for entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, coaches. They still get it, right? Because they have the creative liberty to do what they want to. It's often a challenge for senior executives, CEOs, CXOs across the corporate world. What is your best advice or strategy for them to extract their differentiation vis-a-vis the so-called competition?
So inside the organization, I think positioning is by far the most important thing.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things that I talk about, there's many levels when you talk about differentiation. People think that differentiation means you need to do something opposite from what everyone else is doing.
Correct.
And I'm going to challenge that.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be the case. It can, of course, but it doesn't have to be the case. What it means is that you need to do something that is better than everybody else.
Right.
So within your organization, if you're inside an organization and there are 5 leaders that you're competing against for a particular role, after you go to the discover stage and you analyze them, and you realize that based on your analysis, that, for example, these leaders are not as customer centric
Hmm.
as you think they should be.
Sure.
Then your positioning and your differentiation is, number one, you need to position that you are the customer, you are very customer centric as a leader, number one. And
Okay.
your differentiation is being able to show proof that you are as more customer centric than they are. And that's what's going to
Got it.
differentiate you. How do you do that? For example, customer could give you testimonials. You can get customers to sing your praises inside your organization.
Yeah.
You could really go the extra mile for your customers. So in that sense, your positioning has been strengthened and has been differentiated vis-a-vis the 5 leaders that you're competing against.
True.
So just to make sure, because I know when I meet organizations, it goes, I want to be differentiated. And they've been told that differentiation means that they don't need to do something that's different from everyone else. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing, but I'm saying that you can look at differentiation based on different things. Now, in my framework, we have 24 ways that you can differentiate yourself.
Wow.
It's a framework that we have created where we go into organizations. Of course, it's proprietary, so I'm not going to be sharing it here with you. You're going to hire me for that. But I've just shared with you for an example, one quick example of that
Correct.
is differentiation by strengthening what you're good at. So
Hmm.
we call it attribute differentiation.
Okay.
Strengthen and pick something, an attribute that you want to own and strengthen that
Sure.
against everyone else. And that's an element of differentiation.
Brilliant. So I think today the most important evolution is of the whole business model around thought leadership, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, authors, coaches are reinventing themselves with COVID on their heels. What are the new age business models, or what are the COVID era specific business models you've seen emerging that the non-corporate thought leaders can benefit from based on your experience?
I didn't get the question. So non-corporate thought leaders. So you're saying the entrepreneurs, right?
Correct. Entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, coaches,
Oh,
trainers who are in the business of serving the world via their thought leadership. Today, the business of thought leadership is not like how it was 10 years ago. And I'm sure in your experience of working with a lot of these people, you've seen that business model also evolve on how they bring value on the table, how they package their solutions, services, knowledge, wisdom, expertise,
okay.
and make a living, right? So, what are the different business models available today for these people?
Well, I mean, of course, the most common one is of course the pivot into virtual programs, right? And I know everyone will be saying that. How can I pivot into the virtual world to virtual programs? So that's of course one big thing. I was very lucky. I mean, look, I travel about 80 days in a year, running programs all around the world. In February this year, I lost all my work. Everything went off.
Right.
But I was very lucky because I already was doing virtual programs for clients. So I had clients in other countries that said, look, Jerome, you're not going to pay for your business class ticket.
Sure.
And I said, fine, I'll just do it virtually from my home. And I did it. So when this thing, and this was already in 2018, 2019, I was doing all these virtual programs.
Okay.
So when COVID hit us, I was able to transition very quickly, and I
Right.
was able to get back the business that I lost in person.
Hmm.
Because I was able to demonstrate to clients that I was able to do it. I mean, go and Google Jerome Joseph virtual training. You'll see I had a video out
Okay.
probably in March, I believe, already telling people, hey, I can do this. I can do virtual training for you. And that really helped me. So I'm packed. Like for my work till the end of the year, this has probably been my best year
Wow.
because I was able to pivot very quickly. So the speed of pivot is very important.
Got it.
If you're going to go into the virtual world, make sure you do it fast.
Okay.
Number two is to start looking at exploring channels where you can impact. Now, there's one thing that I've been procrastinating for probably 15 years.
All right.
15 years ago, in my strategy plan, so by the way, whatever I just shared with you about the 5D approach, I applied to myself as well. So I've got an entire roadmap of things that I do. And every year I relook that roadmap to make sure that I am on track.
Right.
Now, in this road, and of course, when you develop a roadmap, there are certain things that you don't do. Now, 15 years ago, I wrote that I wanted to do e-learning. 15 years ago, I wanted to go online, I wanted to run programs, and I had it there. Fast forward today, and I finally just got my first program out.
Wow.
Which is number one. I mean, I'm disappointed with myself.
Sure.
Someone said, "Don't be hard on yourself." I go, "Yes, I'm hard on myself because if I had done this 15 years ago, I would have been first in marketplace, but I've been procrastinating." So on my end, I told myself, I may be late in the game, but it doesn't mean I'm not in the game.
Correct.
So the second thing that you can do is, of course, look at e-learning and looking at how you can use e-learning. Number three is to also look and seeing how you could reinvent yourself in other modes. I'll give you a simple example. I have a speaker that I'm coaching. Now, this speaker does a lot of keynotes. And of course, the keynotes has dried up for this particular speaker. So one of the things that I told her to do was, could you shift your business model into something else?
Sure.
So this is what she has started to do. She has started to coach other people to be better speakers. So she's transitioned from being a keynote speaker to a coach for speaking.
Great.
What I'm telling your viewers is this: there are opportunities in the marketplace. And I talked about it earlier. Look for needs that you find and look at how you could reinvent yourself for that need. I have another client who's a restaurant. Of course, restaurants have been very badly hit. And I know probably about 70% of my business comes from consulting businesses, right? Small, medium enterprises. And this guy, his business, they sell Middle Eastern food. And overnight in Singapore, what happened was all the restaurants were forced to shut down.
True.
He came to me, what am I going to do? I said, let's look at the need. What's the need? People are going to be stuck at home. They're going to need food.
Sure.
And he pivoted. In 2 weeks, he had a full operational online business delivering Middle Eastern food to your home.
Wow.
And guess what? He has made more money in this business than in the restaurant business.
That's amazing.
So there is opportunities because the need that came out of it. So the point I'm trying to make is there are opportunities out there. Some things, and by the way, just because someone tells you to go and do an online program doesn't mean it's for you.
True.
Someone tells you need to go and do virtual, it may not be for you, right? But there might be something out there that's meant for you. So that's when you really need to reevaluate and reinvent yourself based on that need.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing these three insights, Jerome. I have to admit again, you are one of the most energetic and engaging speakers I have
Thank
seen
you.
on the speaking circuit. Okay. What are your secret ingredients of maintaining that energy first, and second, crafting such a stellar keynote that makes you, of course, and other speakers that we can learn from you, absolutely unforgettable?
Well, look, my big part of my brand is passion. I want people to feel my passion. And I'm sure through this, you can kind of feel it, right? It comes through to you, Tanvi.
Yeah.
And I hope your viewers feel the same way. So passion is a big part of what I do. So when I get on stage, I look at it as a performance.
Right.
I don't go in. I don't go in with this mindset like, oh no, I'm virtually going to go talk again.
Hmm.
It's a performance for me. And every performance requires drama, flair, energy,
Oh,
passion. So that's important. So that's one of the things that I look at it. And now before we got on the call, I'm not sure if you realized this. So by the way, before we went live, I was talking to Tanvi. Tanvi, I look dead tired to you, didn't I? Because
not at all, honestly.
I just finished the keynote. So I've given all my energy out, and now we're going to call. And I'm telling you, I'm dead tired. But the minute you went, Jerome, we're recording, we're live, boom, I appear.
Right.
So I turned myself on, right? So it's turned me on, my book title. So that's number one. Number two, when I get on stage, when I speak, I do two things that I've come to it's kind of my thing when I do my stage, but I'm going to share with you and you can apply it. Number one is I tell stories.
Hmm.
As you can tell, just in this conversation, I've dropped a lot of stories.
Absolutely.
For me, storytelling is a very powerful way to get your message across. But the second thing is this. So there's two things. The second thing is this. I am a practitioner, meaning that whatever I'm telling you now, I'm practicing it. I'm coaching clients, I'm consulting with clients. I own a brand consulting firm. I speak on it. So being a practitioner means
Right.
that not only am I telling you the stories, I'm also giving you a practical way for you to do it. So it's stories with action. For
Hmm.
example, I shared the 5-step framework with you.
Okay.
Very actionable, something you can take and you can apply.
True.
So if you get me to speak at an event or you get me to run a program, you will get stories, but you also get frameworks and ideas from
Correct.
my 23 years of experience.
Right.
And that's what I bring to the table. And that's why I get booked for people to speak.
Hmm. Brilliant. So tell me, I loved all the ingredients you mentioned: drama, performance, flair, suspense, energy, passion. But while it's a stagecraft, when you're talking about that mastery, it's a different ball game, right? But today we have tiny virtual stages we all are stuck behind. How do you adapt all of these or some of these to present with that same amount of energy, passion, and drama without coming across as an insane speaker who's not, transitioned to this new way of virtual keynote?
Tell me, I wish you could have seen me in action just doing my keynote this morning.
Right,
I, I got to admit, right? As you said, all of us have doubt. I've done virtual workshops, so I've not done a virtual keynote before. So
right.
this year, in March, I had to do my first ever virtual keynote.
Mm,
But because, I'm comfortable in front of her. As you can see, I'm very comfortable in front of being in a virtual setting. But a
correct.
keynote's different. In
True.
a virtual workshop, you're seated with someone, you may be with them for like 6 hours, 5 hours, and that's okay, right? This is fine. But in a virtual keynote, you got 45 minutes to impress.
Correct.
It means that the way you use so I like the word you use, stagecraft. I spend a lot of time rehearsing and bringing stagecraft to a keynote.
Mm,
In the virtual world, you can do the same. So
okay.
for example, I've got a great studio setup. And when I do a keynote, I'm not seated, I'm standing.
Right.
And how I've created my own virtual setup is I can move. So you'll see me standing and moving. And
True.
on top of it, my slides are going to be behind me.
Mm,
And I've designed it in a way where I'm actually talking to. So for example, if I'm telling a story, so this is how I do it. If I'm telling a story,
right.
what will happen is there'll be a person down here in the story, and it's me talking to him.
Mm,
For example, here am I at an event, and I met John, and this is what John. So you see what I'm doing?
correct.
So it kind of brings that little bit of flair so that people actually feel like I'm with John, talking to John when I tell my story.
Mm,
And that's how you do it. You can make virtual keynotes extremely exciting. Now look, I get paid good money to do a keynote, and I need to be world class every single time. So I've invested a lot of money making sure that I've got the best equipment, I've got the best studio set up because I need to be world class. That's my brand. If I want to be a world class thought leader, if I want to be a world class brand, I need to benchmark against the best and be better than them. period.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I know I'd see that absolutely in every keynote that I've seen of yours, especially. Unfortunately, I've never seen you speak a lot, but I've seen that consistent growth as well. Not just consistency, but even the growth that you've manifested as a speaker on stage. Okay, I loved what you said. Everyone has to grow to be a world class thought leader. That is the end game. My final question to you today is, what are your three best strategies that you can advise leaders to start adopting to grow from being just a leader or thinking like a leader to evolving as a thought leader?
So again, the question is what kind of leaders? We're talking about leaders inside an organization or someone that owns their own business.
Can we talk about both?
Okay.
Sure.
Well, I mean, it's really the kind of principles that I shared about earlier, which is knowing your audience.
Okay.
So for me, as a leader, be it inside an organization, external,
Hmm.
or when you owning your own business, knowing your audience is extremely important because it allows your personal brand to fit into the needs of your audience. So when I say audience, I'm talking about your colleagues, your team members, your board of directors,
Mm.
your customers, I mean, so on, right? So
So,
knowing your audience is very important. So that's for me is key. And I invest a lot of time in getting to know my audiences because then it allows me to what's the word? It allows me to then strategize my brand accordingly.
all right.
Number two, plan.
Hmm.
Everything that I do is intentional.
Correct.
I spend a lot of time thinking about my brand and thinking about what I need to do. So you need to do the same. I would say, if you can, maybe in December, put aside some time and sit down and think about what you want to
So,
communicate about your brand over the next 1 year. What do you want people to think about you, feel about you? What problem are you going to solve? How do you want people to believe in you, have trust in you? How can you influence and plan and prepare yourself for 2021? So for
mm,
me, that's number two. Number three is and I maybe there's a whole bunch of points, but one thing that really struck me is the power of storytelling.
okay.
So what I would recommend leaders to do is to build a
Mm.
story bank of stories.
Mm-hmm.
And these stories need to demonstrate who you are and what you stand for.
Right.
And you can use these stories strategically with people that you meet.
Okay.
Look, I just did it with you.
Correct.
In this particular interview, I told you a few stories and it's intentional because I want to get my point across. If I meet someone, if I meet a potential customer, or if I'm coaching or mentoring my team member, I have stories that I have that I know that I've written down that I use strategically. So stories would be a great way to get your message across to your target audience. So three things.
Brilliant. I think what I loved out of the three things is make your personal brand intentional because it's called strategy for a reason. It cannot be accidental, right? On that note, I want to invite you to just share the gift that you're going to be giving to our audience. So, Jerome has crafted a fantastic gift for all of you all to kickstart your journey of transcendence of building your personal brand as a thought leader. Jerome, can you quickly give us a sneak peek into what is it that you're offering to everyone?
Wonderful. So, we talked about me doing an online e-learning program. It's something that I've
Right.
been wanting to do for 15 years and I finally did it. And
Right.
we're building an ecosystem of great learning materials. The first program that we created was a program called the Global Trends course. And inside, I share 20 key trends that personal brands or organizational brands need to adopt to be successful at least in the next 3 years.
All right.
We have been selling the program for 197 US dollars. Now, here comes the good news. I am going to give you the program for free. Now, you might think I'm being crazy, giving away for free, but I believe that this is the time for organizations and personal brands to add value to their networks, to add value to the audiences. So here is my gift for you. If you go into my course, and I know Tanvi is going to give you the link,
Yeah.
and if you type the word brand guy, and in fact, just last week, I changed it so that you can do it, you will get the course for $0 for free. It's going to be yours, but just for a limited time, because I believe we are going to send it back to 197 after you launch this Tanvi. We're going to wait for a month, and then that's it. We're going to go back to 197. We've already sold about 600 paid subscriptions for it. So the people who bought it are going to go, hey, I should have listened to Tanvi.
Absolutely.
But we're going to give it to you for free, right? So this is our Christmas gift, our way of saying thank you for listening to this show, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jerome. I think that's such a generous gesture at your end to help people who's obviously in love with you by the end of this conversation. You've already shared such valuable knowledge and insights today in the course of Monarch, plus your trends on what to watch out for, what to adapt yourselves to when it comes to personal branding or corporate brands as well. If you're looking at entrepreneurs tuning in today, is going to be a life changer for everyone. I'm confident of that. So thank you so much once
You're
again
welcome.
for sharing that with us. And my deepest gratitude for you to take a time out and join us today and grace our festival. It's been a pleasure and an honor speaking to you and getting to know you better.
You're welcome, Tanvi. And thank you everyone for listening in. Appreciate it.
Right. I'll talk to you soon. Until then, take care of yourself. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.